my name is Hunter, the movie reviewing pony, because when it comes to cinema, I am so tired of how they're portraying virtual reality. Every time we see virtual reality in a TV show, or a movie, or an anime, whatever, they're usually doing it wrong. This is less of a hit piece on what form of virtual reality it might be, whether it be like the full immersive dreaming virtual reality, augmented reality, or whatever. It's more about the fact that people never seem to hit anything.
Okay, yeah. I just knocked over everything.
Maybe hold it up. That's as high as I can hold it. Wait.
It's in the desk drawer. The desk drawer.
Okay.
Try that.
It's in the desk drawer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the desk.
Yeah, it's right
my
underneath
bed.
the.
Hang on.
Okay, so if you're facing the right.
So yeah, you hit things. You hit things a lot. So how come when we see VR headsets in TV and movies, nobody's hitting anything? Now, when it's not being terrible, it's always in incredibly small doses. BoJack Horseman has one scene which is honestly one of the more accurate depictions of virtual reality. It's not really this grand, majestic, and beautiful thing. It's a bunch of people stumbling around like idiots, often knocking things over in the real world. Whether we want to admit it or not, virtual reality is still in its infancy. The hardware is clunky. It's hard to actually carry it around on your head. It's a long and tedious setup. It's expensive. There are a ton of cords involved that you will trip over. Sometimes the whole damn thing doesn't even work. The major thing we have yet to overcome with virtual reality is that virtual reality is still very much grounded in reality. Real reality. Reality. You still exist in a physical space. Sword Art Online seeks to bypass this problem by just having it be what they call full dive gear. Basically, you dream a reality that is wired into your head via a headset. But in reality, products like this will probably never come to light due to FTC regulations. Which means for the foreseeable future, unless we're sitting down, we're gonna be flailing around a room. And for some reason, Hollywood executives don't want to admit how stupid this actually looks. There's no way we're ever going to be able to make what we're doing in the real world look good unless somebody's an Olympic athlete. It doesn't stop there either. Movement in virtual reality is messed up. It's glitchy. It's imperfect. Hollywood writers don't seem to grasp this yet because I can assure you, with 86% certainty, none of them have worn a VR headset in their entire lives, which means they don't have a disconnect from reality, they have a disconnect from virtual reality. The very latest example of this disconnect is in Glitch Techs, a show that is basically video game nerds meets XCOM meets Ghostbusters meets the SCP Foundation. Episode 1, they have a bunch of guys up on a stage for a VR video game tournament. They're all up on this one stage with very little distance between each other. This is insane. Honestly, this stage should look like more like a bunch of guys playing a game of Twister by the end of this match. But it doesn't stop there. At the same time, the main character, or, well, she's basically the main character, Miko, is playing the exact same game in her living room. And through this whole match, with her punching and her kicking, she does not break her freaking leg off on the couch or the coffee table. Cause see, the thing is, virtual reality games were meant to be played in a somewhat decently sized space, and a lot of us don't have that, myself included. But then you have augmented reality, not virtual reality per se, basically something akin to Pokemon Go. And this is where things start getting really dangerous. We already saw all of the damage Pokemon Go was able to cause. The Sword Art Online movie deals with an augmented reality game, and when our main character isn't complaining about having to actually sword fight in the real world, he's too busy not being hit by cars. Now, Sword Art Online is already everything that virtual reality shouldn't be. In fact, if you're gonna write anything that has to do with virtual reality, please, for the love of God, don't use Sword Art Online as a reference guide. And while Sword Art Online is bad, its unofficial sequel, Excel World, is even worse. When playing the game in Excel World, your perception of time just slows down to absolutely nothing in the real world while you're playing the game. Which, now this is basically super future type shit. Now granted, this anime takes place in the 2070s or something, and the game they're playing isn't technically speaking legal? But even outside of the Sword Art universe, there's other animes that just don't seem to know how VR works. I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense just doesn't really seem to talk about its VR apparatus at all. But nothing even comes close to the most heinous of all of these examples. Ready Player One is the worst interpretation of virtual reality in anything, period. In this universe, there are some people who can afford to hook themselves up to a gaming rig that will actually hold them in place while they move their feet on a trackpad below them. This is the ideal solution to VR, but it's expensive and a lot of people aren't gonna have that. So naturally, there's gonna be hundreds of people actually doing karate moves in the street and not hitting anybody. There's gonna be people running up and down the streets, not hitting anything or anyone. I don't need to explain why this is a terrible idea, do I? I mean, at least 10 of these people got hit by cars. When you put on a virtual reality headset, it is extremely easy to lose track of where you reside spatially. But Hollywood writers just don't seem to be able to grasp this. Now, I get it, I really do. It takes all the flow out of a scene if one of the characters has to stop because they broke their leg off on a dresser or something. It's not exactly something that's particularly easy to write unless, of course, you're doing a comedy. But again, virtual reality is still in its infancy, and chances are, we're never actually going to overcome that physical obstacle. And there's a good chance that virtual reality never will achieve the perfection that it seems to have in all of these TV shows and movies. Right now, people are saying that VR has peaked with the release of games like Boneworks or the upcoming Half-Life Alyx. But the thing is, virtual reality is still very much out of a lot of people's grasp, because you need some pretty beefy hardware in order to run this stuff in the first place, and then there's the cost of the virtual reality hardware itself. So, until virtual reality becomes more mainstream, maybe we don't even put it in TV and movies, or at least not in a serious sense. And at the very least, Hollywood writers need to understand we're gonna hit things. That was all the games. Well, that'll be fun picking up, won't it? This is your fault! Make no mistake, we're on the cutting edge of technology, and Hollywood writers need to keep up with that kind of stuff. And you know what? I think that's something to think about. My name is Hunter, and this has been a Hunter Review. Technically. This is my show. I can review whatever I want.